While he was away, I got drunk, slept with his boss, but he returned before I could even dress.
The one very mistake I made ruined my life and my marriage. I didn't know that this mistake could mess things up for me. My husband caught me with his boss, and he didn't think twice before taking out his revenge on me. I take full accountability for my actions, but he just went too far with his revenge. He shouldn't have acted the way he did. His revenge was just too cruel. My husband perfectly planned everything and waited for me to fall right into his trap. I fell for it, and now I'm reaping the consequences. Hi guys, my name is Patricia, and I am a 27-year-old fast food owner. The name of my husband is Michael. He is a 30-year-old business analyst. My husband and I had been married for 3 years, but unfortunately, we're no longer together. We have known each other for a very long time. Michael was 18 years old when he and his family moved into our neighborhood. At that time, I was 15 years old. Practically, Michael and I were childhood friends. Michael and his family moved into the town at that time because they had transferred his father for work. And so, he wasn't familiar with the neighborhood. At some point then, both of us parents got closer together and made friends. But Michael and I had our own little differences and often argued over little things. Something seemed off with Michael at that time. He was not like the usual kids. He didn't like playing or associating with friends. He was always reading even when it was a holiday. Honestly speaking, Michael was an introvert. Few months after Michael and his family had moved in, Michael and I later got along. We became friends and spent time together whenever his family came over for dinner. We even attended the same high school down to college. We never dated during that period. We were just friends and neighbors. 2 years after graduation from college, Michael asked me out. I patiently waited to be his girlfriend. I liked Michael back then, but I didn't tell him because I didn't want to be turned down, and also we weren't friends. I accepted and we dated for a year before we finally tied the knot together. The wedding was memorable, and I felt like I had made the best decision at that time. We were in love with each other. So guys, a few months after our wedding, everything moved fine, and we lived happily. We were an average couple then because we were just trying to figure out something meaningful with our lives. We planned to not take any financial assistance from our parents, and we survived each day. At that time, our parents' relationship became stronger because of our union. Despite everything then, Michael treated me nice. We went on regular dates, and he also bought me gifts. He never gave me a chance to look outside or even regret marrying him. That even brought us closer together. 1 year after our wedding, Michael got promoted at his office. He gave professional advice to the company he was working with, and also was made a personal assistant to his boss. After Michael's promotion, everything went well and we lived happily. I also opened a fast food restaurant with the help of Michael. He supported my business and came over to help me out with work anytime he was work-free. It wasn't an easy start. The first few months were challenging, but I overcame all the challenges with the help of Michael. My husband also referred his colleagues to the restaurant to either have breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and they all did. One day, while I was at the restaurant sorting out the sales for the day, I got a call from Michael's mom, Trisha. I quickly picked the call and we exchanged our usual greetings. Michael's mom and I were very close. She treated me more like a daughter-in-law. Apparently, Trisha gave birth to Michael and 3 other boys, and so she took me like the daughter she never had. So guys, after our usual greetings, she told me that she was trying to plan a surprise for Michael Dad's 60th birthday. She told me that she wanted an extra hand, and I was the perfect person that would help her carry out the surprise. I was excited and told her how happy I was to help out. So I got off the phone and headed over to the house later that day. We made the necessary arrangement and set out the things we needed for the surprise. Everyone knew about the surprise except for Michael's dad, Dave. Trisha gave out a strict warning to all of us, and we all complied. 3 days later, it was Michelle's dad's birthday. The surprise really came out good. There were lots of drinks and food to eat. Everyone came with gifts, and it was a nice birthday party. Michael and I also gave him a very thoughtful gift. We all had fun. It was indeed a wonderful night, and everyone enjoyed themselves. The party ended at 10 p.m., and everyone exited the venue. My husband and I drove home together that night, and we headed to bed straight because we had a tired night. The next day, I woke up and turned to the other side of the bed, but I didn't find Mikhail as usual. He must have woken up early to go to work. I got out of bed and prepared myself to go to the restaurant. I did my morning routine and left home. I arrived at the restaurant and I saw that there were a lot of orders waiting for us. My workers and I got to work and we cleared it out. Not long after we had opened, my husband walked in with his boss, Raphael. His boss wanted to have breakfast at the restaurant that morning. My husband's boss had come over several times to have food at the restaurant. There were times he came and had food with his clients. I was used to having him around. So guys, I took out his order and one of my workers, Kate, served him. My husband also had breakfast with his boss. I sat at a corner and watched them eat. They kept talking about business, and at some point I didn't really understand what they were really discussing at that moment. A few minutes later, they were done and were ready to head out of the restaurant. Raphael left a huge tip for me because of how tasteful the food was. I declined at first, but he seemed persistent. And also, I looked at my husband to see if he was okay with it. But Michael didn't bother, and I collected it. I was very happy, and I thanked him for his generosity. We left the restaurant, and so I walked them to the car. They got into the car and drove off. Then I walked back into the restaurant and continued my work. 2 months later, it was our 3rd-year wedding anniversary. I got up very early that morning before Michael. Apparently, I had been planning on surprising him. A few minutes later, he got up. We exchanged our greetings and we told ourselves happy anniversary. I was very happy that he remembered despite his busy schedules. We got dressed and we went to our place of work. So guys, I got early from work that day because I wanted to surprise my husband. Of course, it was our 3rd year as a couple. I called him on the phone and told him to come back early, which he assured me he would. I went home and made a nice meal for. I wanted us to have dinner at home. I did everything and lighted the candles. It was a romantic dinner date just for the 2 of us. Not long after, my husband arrived home, and I waited at the door for him to come. Immediately, he opened the door and I yelled, "Surprise!" He was so happy to see that I had taken time to celebrate our anniversary. We hugged and headed to the dining table. Apparently, my husband got me a gift when he was coming from work. We exchanged our gifts and professed our love to each other. We then proceeded and ate our meal. We cleared the table after we had our meal and went to watch our favorite TV shows. And after a while, I slept off. I couldn't watch the movie until the end because I was very tired. The next morning, I woke up and found myself on the bed. Michael must have had a hard time taking me upstairs. I thought to myself and laughed. As usual, my husband had left early to work. I decided not to go to work that day because I wanted to visit my parents. I haven't heard from them for a while then because I was so busy with work that I hardly had time for myself. I called Michael and informed him I would be going to see my parents. He said okay and told me to come back early, which I agreed to. I went to the bathroom and had my bath, got dressed, and left. I didn't bother informing them because I was very sure they were going to be at home. Plus, I wanted my visit to be a surprise. I arrived at my parents' house 15 minutes later. Yes, it was a 15-minute journey. We were that close to each other. I got out of my car and headed to the door. I knocked a few times, but no one opened the door. Everywhere was silent and I wondered what could be wrong. I still remembered the passcode and I went inside. I got in and no one was at home and everything was neatly put in place. I took my phone and called my dad, but his lines were off. At that moment, I was scared and had bad thoughts running through my mind. I called my mom and after a few rings, she picked the phone. I asked her if everything was okay and why they weren't at home, but she said all was fine and told me not to bother myself about anything. Apparently, they went to visit a friend of theirs a few miles away from the neighborhood. So, guys, I was happy that nothing happened. Before I got off the phone with my mom, I told her I would wait for them to come back, and so I waited. A few hours later, they arrived home. I was very happy to see them, and we chatted for a while before I left and headed back home. By the time I arrived home, it was a few minutes past 6, and Michael hadn't come back at that time. I called him, and he told me he was a few minutes away from home. I went inside and freshened up and went downstairs. I thought about the things me and my mom had chatted about, and I felt happy. I had really missed them. Sometimes I feel like I haven't done enough for them. I was reminiscing about the fun I had with my mom when Michael walked in. I was startled at first because he didn't knock on the door as usual. Maybe I must have forgotten to lock it. We greeted each other and we asked ourselves about our day before he went upstairs to change. Immediately, I left to set his dinner, and I continued with what I was doing. A few minutes later, he came down to eat his meal and went back to the room. I was very curious about it because it was unlike him, and so I got up and asked him if everything was okay. He told me that he was just tired from the day's work, and so he came back to lie down. Honestly speaking, at that time he looked very tired. I also joined him in bed and we rested for the night. Michael's behavior continued for a couple of weeks, and I was becoming fed up with his constant mood swings. I decided to pressure him into telling me what was wrong with him. After much persuasion, he told me that he had been overworked by his boss for the past few months, and I was very surprised because he had told me they were not very busy at that time of the year. He then explained to me about them expanding their business and all. I saw the work was taking a huge toll on my husband, and I decided I was going to do something about it. The following day, I made up my mind that I was going to speak to Michael's boss, Raphael. I know I made the decision to do that on my own, but I needed to do something about it because my husband was grinding himself to the ground, and I knew he was not going to say anything to his boss because he loved what he did, i.e., his work. I was in the restaurant 2 days later when Michael called me about a work trip he was going on at the last minute, and I saw it as an opportunity for me to go pay his boss, Raphael, a visit. I knew I was doing the right thing because it was for the welfare of my husband. I quickly finished what I was doing and I left for their office. I got there, and every time I come here, I am very much in awe about the organization of the offices. I told his assistant I was here to see her boss, but she told me I didn't have an appointment. I tried explaining to her that I know him, but she couldn't listen to me. I gave up hope, and I was about to leave when I saw Raphael coming out from his office with a man. I quickly ran to him, and I told him about how I wanted to see him, and I didn't have an appointment. He apologized to me, and he ushered me into his office. I sat down, and I got straight to the point with him. I told him about Michael's recent poor health and how he had been overworking himself lately. Raphael put me at ease about everything, and he told me he was going to cut back Michael's working hours. At that point, I became very scared, thinking that I may have jeopardized his work, but he quickly told me that cutting back his hours doesn't mean Michael was going to lose his job. I felt relieved because I knew Michael was going to be upset if he found out that I paid his boss a visit without his knowledge. I told Raphael not to mention my visit to Michael. He agreed, and he walked me out of his office with his hand on my lower back. I felt some type of way, because he shouldn't have done that because I was the wife of his employee, and I thought they had some sort of friendship. After leaving the office, I went back home and called Michael. We talked for some time, and I found out he was feeling much better, and also he was extending his trip for a little while because his boss gave him time to rest. But I asked why he couldn't rest at our home. He replied and said he needed to be away from the city for a few weeks. I agreed to it because it can get really intense with the work they do. We said our goodbyes and I got into bed. Things were moving swiftly, guys. My husband was fine where he was and my business was moving forward. I was at the restaurant when Raphael came in with a group of men in suits. I assumed they were from his work. I asked someone to take their other and I continued with my work some hours later. I thought I should leave early and go see Trisha for a while. I was about to leave when I saw Raphael still in the restaurant, but that time he was alone. I went over to say hello, and he asked me to join him for a drink, which I accepted because I didn't want to seem rude to him. We talked about random things, and I discovered that Raphael was actually a very interesting person. He told me how he worked so hard from an early age, and because he was from a rich family, he had to work extra hard. I also told him about how Michael had worked his way up to be where he is today. I also told him it was one of the things I admired about my husband. I admired his dedication. I finished up my drink and I told Raphael I was meeting Michael's mom for dinner and I had to leave. He offered to drive me since it was late and I accepted. We talked on the way and I saw that I had misjudged Raphael because he was actually a very funny and easygoing guy behind the suits and the serious face he carried. He was so easy to talk to. He dropped me off, and we said our goodbyes. I greeted Trisha, and she kept on saying she hadn't seen me in months. I knew she exaggerated a lot, but months? We laughed over it, and we talked about Michael's recent trip, and she had asked me how I was doing without him. I told her I was coping fine. We ate and we gossiped for a little while before I went back home. When I got home, I went straight to bed, and I made a mental note to talk to my parents the following day. I woke up the next day ready to get to work when Michael called me that his boss was coming over to the house to get some particular documents he had left behind. I knew that I was already going to be running late for work, and I decided to wait for Raphael. I was finishing up my breakfast when I heard the doorbell. I knew it was Raphael, and I invited him in. I gave him the documents, and he handed me my pair of earrings I left in his car last night. I thanked him, and I was about to lead him to the door when he begged me to make a cup of coffee for him. I agreed to do so because he was really a nice person, and he was just asking for me to do little. We continued to bond over the coffee, and Raphael kept flirting with me, and at first, I never saw it as anything serious, but it kept coming. He could tell me I was beautiful, and Michael was lucky to have me. It never meant anything to me, and I decided to overlook it. A few days later, Raphael kept visiting my restaurant, and he kept on flirting with me. There were days he could enter the restaurant and sit for hours watching me work and waiting for me to finish my work. In those days, I found the sweet side of Raphael. I got into the restaurant one morning, and I saw a bunch of flowers waiting for me on my desk. I looked at the card and discovered it was from Raphael. It brightened my day, and a few minutes later, I received a call from Raphael, and we talked and he made me laugh throughout our conversation. I had to end the call because I was getting another call from my husband. I spoke to my husband not feeling guilty because I thought what was going on between me and Raphael was not that important, and there was no need for me to worry him over it. I talked to Michael about when he was coming back because I missed him, to which he said he had returned in a week's time. I was very excited because finally he was coming back and I was not going to be lonely again. A day later, Raphael asked how long it was since I went out for dinner, and I couldn't remember, to which he suggested we go out for a friendly dinner. I accepted because I thought it was harmless and all. And since it was going to take a few days before Michael returned, I decided to take him up on his offer. I got dressed and Raphael picked me up. I didn't know how he knew my favorite restaurant, but I was happy to be there. We ate and talked for a while. With Raphael, it was very easy to communicate because he always puts you at ease. I checked my time and I discovered time had passed and there were only a few people remaining at the restaurant. At that point, I was very tipsy. Raphael offered to drop me home, but I had to decline because it was really late and I didn't want to be driven for a long time. I told him to find me a hotel to sleep for the night and I could go home in the morning, but he suggested I could sleep in his guest room. I accepted and he drove us to his house. We got to his house and I knew I was tipsy because I couldn't see properly, and Raphael helped me change my clothes. One thing led to the other, and we started kissing. I didn't know what was going on in my head, but I wanted it to happen, and that was the last thing I remember before everything went blank. I woke up the next morning with a mild headache to see that I was in a strange place. Before I could make out where I was, I heard the voice of my husband, and the next thing was him standing at the door, looking at me horribly. I turned to the left and I saw Raphael naked on the bed. I saw a lot of pain in Michael's eyes and I knew I was in trouble. I left the room without a word and I tried to get dressed and run after him, but Raphael held me back and told me to allow him to be for some time. I felt like it was not a good idea, and I got dressed quickly and went looking for Michael only to see he had left. I looked for a cab and went home looking for him, but he was not there. I kept on trying to reach Michael, but he was not answering me, and some days later, Raphael came by to the restaurant, and I asked him if he knew where Michael had gone. But he didn't know I was getting irritated at that point because I wanted him to come face me and let us talk things through. A few days later, I woke up ready to start my day, and I decided not to think about everything for once and put myself first. I got to work, but my restaurant was closed. I was shocked because my employees are always early to work, and we don't close the restaurant at that hour of the morning. I got a paper served to me saying I was no longer the owner of my business because it had been sold. I thought it was a very good joke, and I started laughing. because I didn't see how it was possible. I decided to call Michael because he was the only one who could understand how I was feeling, but I couldn't reach him. I called Raphael, and he came as soon as he could. I gave him the papers with my hands shaking. Then Raphael told me after that Michael, being the legal owner of my restaurant, had sold it. I didn't want to believe him at first because I knew Michael wasn't that cruel. But I remembered what I did to him, and I couldn't hold my tears. My whole life's work had been thrown into the drain by Michael. That was the cruelest thing to do to anyone. I got home to see my things were outside with Michael standing at the door with the divorce papers. I begged him to listen to me, and I tried explaining to him that the house was mine too. But he said he had bought the house in his name. That's all he did to me. I can't believe he turned out to be a ruthless man. I'm still trying to process all that he did to me. Update. I've seen the comments, and I must say that you all are really cruel. None of you wanted to leave any stone unturned, and you made sure you crushed my pride. I guess I deserve it all. I cannot believe that I've ended up as a divorced woman who has lost everything. I thought things would charge, and I'd get back everything I've lost, but nothing like that happened. It's all gone, and it's as a result of my stupidity. At that moment, everything came crashing down on me. I had lost my restaurant, which I built with some much sweet, and I also lost my marriage, and I was homeless. It became clear to me that Michael was a cruel person who never thought of anybody but himself. This is everything he did to me, guys. I don't think I can ever recover from it. But I guess karma dealt with me. It's really hard having to pretend like everything is okay while it's not. I don't know why I did it, but I did it anyway, despite my boyfriend's disapproval. I was told and advised to not spend any more time with the coach because it would not end well. With stubbornness and hunger for success in my acting career, I pushed all those advice at the back of my head and continued doing what I thought was right. But nothing happened. It was purely work. Maybe the coach might have tried making a move here and there, but I knew I had a boyfriend that I loved and held in very high regards. Guess what the boyfriend did? He made my life a living hell. He made sure that I suffocate and not be able to breathe. It felt like I was in the middle of the sea. I was drowning, and I was trying by all means to get out and save myself. But someone was busy pushing me back inside to a point that I saw my life flashing right before my eyes. It was really toxic, and I was glad that I got a chance to finally walk away from the relationship. I won't lie and say I do not miss my boyfriend, or I no longer love him because I do, and I do so much. I knew he had a problem of always thinking for himself. He was arrogant to a point that he never considered someone else's feelings. As long as his own feelings are considered, another person is not important. Did I do wrong by wanting to chase my dreams? I thought he would change, but I guess I was wrong. Please tell me what to do to fix all the mess that my ex-boyfriend had made in my career because it's no longer promising. What should I do? So Quentin, my boyfriend, male 27, and I, female 25, met at an ultra music festival that always takes place around March 20-something in Miami. It is a 3-day festival, and I always make sure not to miss it. Well, me and my siblings always made sure to never miss it. It was like our tradition to always attend an ultra music festival. So as we were busy dancing and enjoying the music with my siblings, I decided to leave them a little and go to some trailer that was selling food and drinks. When I got here, I ordered my food since I was somehow hungry, and as I was about to pay, there came this handsome, random guy. He greeted us, me and the food seller, and the seller that he was going to pay for both my order and his. Well, at first I found that really weird and unsettling because in my world we no longer had good Samaritans. So I wondered what the guy had wanted because we didn't even know each other. So I thanked him for the kind gesture and we continued chatting for a while. He was actually a very fun and sophisticated guy. Besides his charming and handsome self, he was what we call the IT guy. His blue hazel eyes were very hypnotizing. He was also a very sweet person and good company. We hung around for like an hour or two until one of my siblings approached us and told me that we had to go since it was getting pretty late. So Quentin and I exchanged numbers and promised each other that we would continue to chat over the phone. 3 days later, I received his call asking to meet up with him since he was around Coconut Grove, where I was staying. I agreed to the meetup, and we met at a local cafe that was not far from my home. We spent a lot of time chatting about our goals and objectives. It was really fun and a breath of fresh air to spend some time with him. I loved the fact that he was the guy with ambition and consistency to reach his goal in the entertainment industry since he was a filming producer. We had a lot in common, since I was also an aspiring actress. I was glad to find someone like him who would guide me, coach me, and help me build my acting career. That is what I had thought when I got into a relationship with him. Little did I know that I was getting myself a trap. There were red flags that I had noticed about him, but the way he was smooth with words, the way he knew how to make a lady melt and happy without even trying hard, made me put all that aside and focus on the present. Quentin and I started dating after going on a couple of dates. Well, more like we made our relationship official 3 months after we became friends. Our relationship was bliss at first. I was the happiest woman on earth. I had told him about my aspiring acting career and that I had dreams of becoming one of the best actresses in Hollywood someday. He was very supportive, He even told me that he would introduce me to his coach. Well, he was his fitness coach and an acting coach. I was glad that he was considering my dreams, and he was willing to help me get into a stepping ladder. Few days later, Quentin took me to his coach's house and introduced me. Well, it was more like a surprise to me because he didn't even tell me that his coach was Alex Frazier, male, 29. I was a big fan of his fiancée, Jessica, female, 25. She was living the life that I wanted to live. She was a true inspiration. Their relationship was what some of us only see on TV. It was so perfect. But social media life and real life are not the same, though I learnt that later. Alex was to become my acting coach. I was going to join his classes that took place 3 days a week, and the extra 2 days were for training. I was happy with the changes that were happening in my life. The path that my career was taking was the path that I had always wished for, and my boyfriend, or must I say ex-boyfriend, made everything easier for me. My classes with Alex were going to open so many doors for me. I have seen his phenomenal work before. Most of his students make it in the acting industry, and I had that hope that I would also make it. Weeks later, I started classes with Alex. Mind you, I had gone to an acting school and learnt the basics. But what Alex taught me was somehow new information to me that I didn't even know or learnt at school. Alex was or is known for his charisma and ability to bring out the best in his students. So being one of his students made me feel like I had achieved everything in life. He ran a very successful and well-known acting agency in Miami, name withheld due to personal reasons. Quentin was working as a film and music producer to one of the aspiring entertainment and filming companies in Pinecrest, Florida, Miami. So I had moved in with Quentin after we dated for 5 months. Well, the reason why I had moved in with him was because I wanted to be closer to him. I mean, he was more like my oxygen, and I couldn't live without him. Our relationship was more like an obsessive relationship. It was kind of toxic, but we enjoyed it like that. I don't know. Maybe I was too much within his grip and blinded by love, but I didn't find anything wrong with how our relationship was toxic. I kept attending my classes and training sessions with Alex. At that time, we were going to be shooting a short video that would help us in the future, in our acting career. Alex's words, not mine. Meanwhile, Quentin had advised me not to spend much time with Alex because I had started coming back to the apartment late, especially during training days, so Quentin didn't like that. Quentin was a very insecure and jealous person, so when I spent more time at the studio with Alex, he would get angry and start being delusional. As my professional relationship with Alex progressed, our bond grew stronger. We would spend countless hours together at the studio, working on routines, scripts, scenes, and discussing strategies for competitions. Alex's charisma and charm made me somehow feel special and valued. So Alex was a charismatic and charming coach who seemed to have all the right advice to propel my career forward. He believed in me, which was one thing that Quentin suddenly changed from. Quentin was no longer the supportive boyfriend. He never really asked me about my classes and training. All he cared about was himself and how big his name was going to be with the movie that they were filming and how much money he had spent to get Taraji P. Henson to be one of the leading stars. While Alex was pushing me to be the best in acting, little did I know that beneath his charming exterior, Quentin was a narcissist who would stop at nothing to control and manipulate me. He had shown me signs before, but I had never taken them seriously because I thought it was just a passing thing and work pressure. But the manipulation and controlling behavior kept getting worse, especially when I would come back late, when training took longer time. Quentin's narcissistic tendencies became more apparent as he sought to control and dominate my life. He would undermine me in the presence of other uprising actresses, making me doubt my abilities and isolating me from my teammates. Yes, he knew everything I was doing during classes and training sessions. He even knew about my projects that Alex would give us to work on. But he never really asked me about anything. I felt trapped, unable to escape the clutches of my narcissistic boyfriend. One night, after a particularly grueling training session, I found myself seeking solace in Alex's arms. We spent the night together, and for a brief moment, I believed that my dreams were finally within reach. However, as days turned into weeks, I realized that my relationship with Quentin had taken a dark turn. He became someone I wouldn't recognize and didn't know. As the evening progressed, the line between our professional and personal relationship became blurred. I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions and gave in to the allure of the moment, spending the night with Alex. The next morning, reality hit me like a ton of bricks. She woke up with a sense of guilt and confusion, realizing the consequences of my impulsive decision. However, the aftermath of that night was far worse than I could have anticipated. My mind kept ringing Quentin's name and reminded myself that if he was to find out, hell would break loose and it would jeopardize my relationship with Quentin. But I didn't do anything with Alex, so it was not supposed to be a big deal, right? About a week later, Quentin went to New York for his film shooting. Mind you, he told me that the day before, well, more like the night before. I didn't know who Quentin was anymore. He had changed to be this dark person with a dark aura. I tried addressing the issue that we were facing with him, but he just told me that he was fine. He was just dealing with work and told me how high the pressure was for him. He promised me that he would get back to his original self and make it up to me when they are done filming the movie. The tension was too thick at the house, to a point that it even affected our intimate moments. Quentin was no longer the romantic Quentin. He was focused on what he was doing. And what would break my heart more was the fact that he wouldn't want to at least show up and show me support when we do training or shooting short scenes that would be involved on our acting resumes. One night, I was alone in the house, all bored and missing Quentin a lot. As I was busy scrolling down my social media feeds when I received a text message from Alex. It was really surprising because our classes were going to continue the upcoming Monday. He was actually telling me there were important parts of the scene that we should look through before Monday. So he suggested that I come over to his house so that we would go through them together. Because I loved what I did and I trusted Alex, I agreed to come over to his house. In my head, I was telling myself that nothing was going to happen, and the guy had a fiancé, so I was safe. Little did I know that when I got there, the fiancé was not present. Alex told me that she had gone home since there was a crisis that needed her attention. So we went through the scenes. We would also take short breaks and speak about our lives in general and our relationship fears. I ended up opening up about my relationship problems. Alex was a very good listener and a good advisor, so I didn't think confiding in him about what I was facing in my relationship with Quentin would actually cost me a lot. However, as the days passed, I noticed a gradual change in my professional life. Projects I had been working on with Alex diligently started to fall apart. Important emails went unanswered, and my reputation began to suffer. I got confused and distraught. I couldn't understand why my once promising career was spiraling downward. Few days later, Quentin got back from New York. Mind you, he had gone for the whole month, and during that month, he had only called me a few times to check up on me. I had even thought that he was having an affair outside our relationship. I mean, I didn't know how to explain his sudden behavior and control freak tendencies. So one day he came back fuming. I was confused by why he was angry. I wondered what had happened at work. Little did I know that the guy that I love was actually angry at me. I was the problem. I tried speaking to him, but he kept asking about what he said to me, and asked if he had ever told me that I shouldn't spend more time with Alex and why I was spending the night at his house. I was shocked by his revelation. I didn't know what to say. My tongue just got tied for some reason. So Quentin, fueled by his own ego and desire for control, started sabotaging my every move. He would criticize my performance, belittle my achievements, and constantly remind me that I owed my success to him. After those hurtful words that he had said, my confidence began to crumble, and I felt trapped in a toxic cycle of love and manipulation. His words were a very sharp stab in my heart. I was not expecting that from him. It was very low, even for him. Months later, as my career took a downward spiral, I started questioning if my relationship with Quentin was worth sacrificing my dreams. I was determined to break free from his grip. I sought the support of my siblings, since they were the only friends I had, and parents, who had noticed the change in her demeanor. My family encouraged me to stand up for myself and reclaim my independence. My heart still yearned for Quentin's love and hoped that maybe he would change someday and be the Quentin that I had fallen deeply in love with. I knew he loved me, but sometimes love alone was not enough if you are happy. I tried talking to Alex about the sudden turn of events and tried to reason with him to at least conduct online classes with me because I would not be able to attend since Quentin was always with him during his free times. And the guy refused, telling me that he can no longer be my acting coach. I should try other acting agencies. I knew there and then that everything that I had worked hard for was slowly vanishing right before my eyes. One day, as I was going through Quentin's phone, I needed to find answers on why Alex would bail out on me all of a sudden. I knew that they had talked about me since they were close friends. I stumbled upon a conversation between Quentin and a mutual acquaintance, not Alex. To my horror, I discovered that Quentin had been intentionally sabotaging me behind my back. The conversations mentioned that he felt threatened by my success and wanted to ensure that I remained dependent on him. I couldn't believe it. I kept reading everything with my hands trembling and tears streaming down my face. The fact that I was one step ahead to the top, I was actually like a foot away to my success. The doors to my acting career were actually waiting for me to enter. But all that took 100 steps down to destroy me and my career. Just because of one night that I had spent with Alex, working on some scenes and scripts. I lost everything. Spending time with Alex cost me a lot. It cost me the love of my life, my future, my career, and took me straight to the bottom of the ladder. Devastated by this revelation, I confronted Quentin, pouring out my heart and expressing my deep disappointment. Quentin, unapologetic and dismissive, twisted the situation, blaming me for his actions and accusing me of being paranoid. With my newfound strength and determination of wanting to get to the bottom of everything, I decided to confront Quentin again about everything, exposing his true nature and breaking free from his hold. I had to find answers on why he was making my life so miserable, and why he was busy sabotaging everything I did. I didn't understand why he would do that to someone he claimed to love, or if he didn't love me. I was not about to feel guilty about something that I knew wouldn't put our relationship into such strings, because he knew I loved him so much to do that to him. I respected him as my partner, even though sometimes he was not deserving my respect. I left with shattered dreams and a sense of betrayal. I found myself at a crossroads. It was like I didn't know where to go or where to turn. I actually had no direction, and it was really weighing me up. I knew that I had to make a difficult choice and decision between staying in a toxic relationship or breaking free and reclaiming my life. I won't lie and say I didn't love Quentin, or I have flushed all my feelings for him because I didn't, and I still love him very much. Is that even normal? Through therapy and reflection, I recognized the toxic dynamics at play in my relationship with Quentin. I also realized that my worth as an actress and as an individual was not defined by his approval or validation. With newfound determination, I made the decision to break free from the toxic cycle. It was a difficult and emotionally draining process, but I knew it was necessary for my own well-being and future success. Summoning my inner strength, I decided to cut ties with Quentin, recognizing that my well-being and professional growth were far more important than any relationship. With determination and resilience, I sought support from my siblings, mentors, and therapy to rebuild my confidence and regain control over my life, just like how my family had advised me to. I had stayed with this guy through his manipulation and controlling while he would go for a month to do his filming things without even calling to check how I was. But because I had spent 2 nights with Alex, but it was strictly work-related, nothing else. So I realized that my success was not dependent on a toxic relationship, but on my own hard work, dedication, and talent. Slowly but surely, I began rebuilding my life, finding a new coach who believed in my abilities and supported me unconditionally. Through perseverance and resilience, I rose above all the challenges and setbacks. becoming a symbol of strength for others who had experienced similar toxic relationships. I used my social media platform to raise awareness about narcissistic abuse and the importance of self-love and empowerment. I did not only triumph in my acting career, but also in my personal life. I learned valuable lessons about the power of self-belief, surrounding myself with positive influences, and never compromising my dreams for anyone. Over time, I regained my passion for acting and flourished as an actress. I went on to achieve remarkable success, proving to myself and the world that I was capable of greatness. Through my journey, I became an advocate for recognizing and addressing toxic relationships in the entertainment community. Slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my career from the ground up. I surrounded myself with positive influences and focused on my own personal and professional development. Through hard work and perseverance, I emerged stronger than ever, proving to myself and the world that I was not defined by the actions of my narcissistic ex-boyfriend. Quentin had posted a lot about me, demonizing my reputation and opportunities. I realized that I had to take drastic measures to protect my career and my sanity. I gathered evidence of Alex's sabotage and reported him to the acting agency company where he worked. Alex was eventually fired, and I was able to rebuild my career without his interference. It took me a long time to heal from the emotional damage caused by my relationship with Alex. But I learned the hard way that it is important to be wary of people with narcissistic personalities and to set boundaries to protect oneself from their manipulative behavior. I eventually emerged from this experience stronger and more resilient. I continued to pursue my acting dreams and eventually achieved success on my own terms. I learned the valuable lesson that true success comes from within, and that it is important to surround oneself with positive and supportive people. To me, my story serves as a reminder that toxic relationships can have far-reaching consequences. It highlights the importance of recognizing and addressing narcissistic behavior early on, and the courage it takes to break free from such destructive dynamics. Ultimately, my journey of self-discovery and resilience became the catalyst for my success, as I learned to trust in my own abilities and create a brighter future for myself. Even though my heart still yearns for Quentin's love and touches, I knew that I had to choose myself and my career first. And I had to get out of the toxic relationship before it was too late. I know my heart should be hating Quentin for sabotaging my career and my reputation, but it still loves him. Am I wrong for wanting to get back with him and try and help him overcome his narcissist behavior? Because if it goes untreated and unspoken, it would become worse and he would do it to someone else. Please advise me, what should I do?